Hey everybody, welcome back to Record-ology. So, I'm not going to make this a very long intro because I've got a little surprise coming up and I want to talk about the amazing story about how I got this deck, because this is one that, I didn't know if I'd ever be able to get one in an affordable way, which I was able to do, and I'm excited to share it with you. But it all started with something completely different. So we'll get to that in a minute. Before that, I just want to say thank you and welcome in. I appreciate all the members of the Vinyl Nation, and I appreciate everybody that's joined us over on TikTok. We're having a blast over there. And yes, we have been doing more shorts. I'm trying to do 3 a day, and I've gotten one person that was like, you're spamming my inbox or whatever. Hopefully most people are just enjoying the extra content. If you're not, just flip on by. It's totally fine. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for all the support and you guys being out there. But that's enough of me. Let's get into the show, you guys. This is Record-ology.
I never thought when I got into vinyl again about 5 years ago and started this channel that I would sort of sidetrack into other interests. And reel-to-reel tape, and actually tape in general, has been one of those areas of interest. And a couple of years ago, and we documented it well on this channel in previous videos, I picked up this tape deck and another one of which I gave away for like $10, $15, $20. Very affordable, works perfectly. It needed a little bit of tweaking, a little bit of recapping that a friend of mine was able to do, no problem whatsoever. And we've got a perfectly operating deck. Now this is very basic. It is not a capstan drive deck. It uses rim drive, so a little pin there driving the rubber backing to the reel. So the pitch changes slowly as you progress throughout the reel, so it's only good for voice. And it was sort of like dipping my toe into the world of reel-to-reel tape, which eventually culminated in the machine we're going to look at in a minute. But there was other tape decks along the way. It's just been fun. So enough of this. Let's get on to the main attraction.
Behold, my friends, we are looking at an Akai GX-4000D. I am so blessed, so honored to have this. I can't even tell you, and I didn't pay a dime. It is not the first tape deck that I have scored for free. I'll tell you how I did that here in a minute. But this is interesting. Akai is sort of prosumer level stuff. This is not quite professional. I mean, it's a 7-inch deck. It's not, studio grade. But it's definitely a step beyond my 1968 Sears, 1968 Memorex that were solidly consumer. This is a step above, okay? So this is based off of a very successful device, or a very successful tape deck by Akai called the Akai 4000DS, which looks pretty similar to this. I'll put a picture of it on the screen right now. That was around 1973 to 1978. Well, come 1978, they decide, and they're doing other things too simultaneously, but they decide to upgrade this deck significantly and give us what will become Akai's last reel-to-reel tape deck, the GX-4000D. Now, before we get close in on some of these functions and features, I want to start by just showing you the immensity of this deck. Hopefully it's coming through. It's huge. I didn't realize it in looking at the pictures, but if I were to put my Memorex next to this, it would be about this big. Like the Sears and the Memorex, width is like this and depth is like that. So this is deeper, it is wider, it is just a beefier deck. And as you can see by these feet right here, and there are feet on the bottom that I have enhanced with some silicone feet, that this can, stand vertical, or in my preference, it can be a flat back tape deck. You know those little toys they give toddlers with all the buttons and switches just to keep them busy? This is my version of that, okay? I can keep myself busy all day with one of these. Okay, so yeah, it's a great deck. It's got that 70s styling aesthetic. It's like a wood grain veneer with a brushed aluminum look. And as I've talked about before, I'm more of a, black on black 90s kind of aesthetic. But this deck is the one I was really, really looking for. I had my eye on the cross-field Akai or Roberts branded units, the vertical ones, with like the separate amplifiers per channel. But they're bulky, they're very expensive, and my understanding, most of those from the early 70s are going to need recapping, they're going to need, work, they're going to need new belts. This one didn't need anything. I cleaned the heads and put tape on, and it was done. So let's talk through the functionality here. It's got an on and off switch right there, and the Roberts and Akai reel-to-reels all have pretty similar controls. Obviously, this is a capstan drive. The capstan is right there. In fact, the capstan engages the moment you power it on, which is kind of interesting, unless you put it into pause, and then it still engages. Okay, never mind. So let's start right there. My point is, once you learn one of these, you can pretty much figure the other ones out. So this switch goes up here for pause, and then you press that for resume. Again, the on and off is right there. This does not have full logic control. Someday I would love to have a tape deck that had full logic control, but these are soft touch paddles. So if I put it into play, it's a soft touch thing. It's not going to be too difficult to operate. It's not like you have to really crank on it. I mean, these literally are very light touch, soft touch controls there. So it's definitely an improvement over what we have had in the past. From a design aesthetic standpoint, one of the things I love best about the Akais is this monstrosity of a pinch roller that's completely separate off to the right of the tape transport mechanism. I think it just looks cool. I've seen some of these that are all cracked up and dried out. This one has a little bit of glazing on it, very minimal. It's perfectly acceptable. And then you can see the capstan that's always on once the unit is on right there. Obviously, there's a big flywheel behind that. It is a belt-driven unit. It has two belts, one for the drive mechanism and then another one for the tape counter. The rest of it is done with idler wheels. So this unit carries on the tradition of the GX series. These are glass and ferrite heads. So that means that these heads will last forever. I mean, they will truly last a long time. We got a little bit of scratching there, but besides that, it's in phenomenally great shape. It is a 3-head unit, but not in the traditional sense. It doesn't have a play and record head that's separate and an erase head like most 3-head decks. This has one play and record head, one erase head, and one bias head. So the way that the GX works is it lays down the bias in a different way. I'm not going to get too technical on that, but it basically gives you better fidelity, better sound quality because it manages the bias in a better way. You could tell the two heads on the right are the only GX heads. The erase head on the left is just a plain old cheapo head. I like to get you guys nice and close to the action. So I'm going to pull the tape off the heads there a little bit so you can see. They look a little bit different. They do not look quite like a regular head, but a GX head, a glass ferrite head, they last forever. That's the biggest thing about it. But the geometry of the head and the way it's laid out is really interesting. I thought that was pretty cool. I learned about glass ferrite heads when I got my Yamaha compact cassette deck. Now, before we move on to other parts of the deck, I want you to pay particular attention to the pieces in this transport that help stabilize the tape. I'm talking about this piece, this piece, this piece, this piece, and especially this guy over here. That is going to come into play in an important way very, very shortly. Also, these two brass pins right here are what stabilize the head cover on. These guys, go over that. But this one right here is actually designed to store the capstan because in order to change speeds on this deck, let me move you over here a little bit. This is a 2-speed deck. It does 7.5 inches per second and 3 3/4. There's no switch. It's a 1-speed motor. So in order to switch between 3 3/4 inches per second, the low quality mode, or to 7.5 inches per second, the high quality mode, you actually unscrew the capstan sleeve and then you can store it when you're not using it on this peg right here. Okay, one of my favorite design elements as well is this piece right here. It does not rotate. In fact, this metal piece right here doesn't rotate either. The pinch roller, the rubber piece rotates, but the top does not. That's heavy duty metal. So is this. All these knobs are metal. It's just super high quality. You can see I've got an adapter here so I can plug in the 1/4-inch jack and use my 1/8-inch headphone cable. It's got a built-in headphone amplifier. And this is a track selector switch, which, let's look at that a little closer. By the way, this is a plastic knob actually, so disregard what I said earlier, and it does come off, but that's pretty common. I can live with that information in my life. So this is a 4-track tape machine, and you can see we got a little bit of control over how those tracks are laid down or picked up there. There's 3 positions. I've got it set right now to just standard 1/4 track stereo mode, which is what most of my tapes are in. And then we've got the tape counter right here, which does work, like I said before. Very nice to have a working tape counter. We do have a tape or source monitor. We've got the sound on sound switch. We've got EQ modes, 2 of them, one for 7.5 inches per second speed and one for 3 3/4, and a tape selector switch as well. And right here, you've got the line input level or the mic level, and then the outer sleeve down here adjust the left to right balance. And finally, we got your mic connections in the bottom right if you want to connect your microphone. And again, I apologize that we're not doing this on the granite counter where we got, better light and all that good stuff. But this has been installed. I've been using it for a couple of weeks now, and I've just been so excited to have an opportunity to tell you about it, to show it to you, to get your input on it. And I'm just so thankful. It sounds fantastic. We're going to listen in a minute to a direct feed. But before we do that, I wanted to kind of just play some ambient audio. We'll just play around with it a little bit. One thing, too, that blows my mind about this deck is that they sold this up until 1984, if you can believe that. 1984. I find that amazing. I find that absolutely amazing. Here is just a pre-recorded tape I've got hooked up right now. And if I want to pause, I just flip that up like that. And when I'm ready to play again, hit that button. And if you want to stop it, it's interesting that it separates the play and record and stop button or switch from the fast forward and rewind. This tape, I'm actually in the process of reloading it onto this. So let's go ahead and fast forward it. And you'll see how fast it goes. Hard to tell with the shutter, but this actually has a pretty fast forward and rewind transport. Now, it's not all sunshine and roses. Okay? I mean, it is. Relatively speaking, my worst problems are happy problems. But right now, you may start to see a problem with this deck. Indeed, it does have an issue. That's right. The spindles, both of them, are bent, which is very annoying to me. I love the fact that it does stop once the tape runs out to the other side of the reel. I think that's a good thing. Not all tape decks do that. But yeah, apparently at some point in time, this plastic sheath, by the way, is separately, just kind of has a little bit of give. But the actual pin, this thing must have fallen on its face at one point and bent these. And that's when that tape stabilizing transport pieces come into play as crucial. Because even though these, have a little bit of play, which translates into a little bit of real platter wobble, the tape as it passes over the heads is stabilized. So it's not really an issue for sound quality. It's just an annoying issue for me. Also, I think it's cool that instead of, having like a rubber cap that goes over this uses a spring-loaded mechanism where you pull it out and rotate it to stabilize like that. So yeah, there is a look at a fresh reel of tape loaded up. Again, this is a custom-made tape by our friend Fardamark. He makes the best mixtapes, and this is no exception. Just super, super cool. And with those hubs locked down, even the little pin wobble that's going on is such a minimal issue. It doesn't impact really anything. Look at how stable the tape is. There's very minimal movement, as you can see there, in terms of wobble. A little bit of warpage on the acrylic reels, which is common, but those tape stabilizing pieces really do the trick. Part of what we enjoy about vinyl is the aesthetic of, touching things and switching things and setting things and being engaged and involved with your media. That switches over, transfers over to reel-to-reel tape, probably even more so than with vinyl itself. This is a very involved thing. I love it. It's so much fun, and to find a deck like this that sounds fantastic, that is modern, that's working perfectly, is just a huge blessing. Now, I promised you the backstory. How did I score this thing for free? I scored the other deck too, the one of the other decks, the Memorex, which was really made by Panasonic. If you remember the story on that, I got that for free. It was a Craigslist deal. It was like $30. And when I got near there, this was during the beginning of the lockdown that we were all in. I probably just didn't want to deal with the outside world. He's like, you know what? Forget about it. It was like, the money's minimal. You just take it, be blessed kind of a thing. And I very much was and am because of that gift. But this one came about in a different way. I saw it for sale. I contacted the seller and we were talking about it. And it turns out he was looking for a record player. And I happened to have an extra record player and we just did a trade. Now, those types of things will happen from time to time. So, if you look at the cost of one of these, and this particular deck goes for anywhere from $300 to $600. And, I would never have been able to afford this, any other way. So the fact that I was able to, figure out a deal like that, even with, slightly bent, metal pieces right there, this was a no-brainer. And you can find stuff like this if you're persistent and you are patient. If you want to get more of a consumer level deck like the Sears and the Magnavox, all that kind of Memorex, was it Memorex or Magnavox? It was Magnavox. I keep saying Memorex. It's Magnavox. Something like that, $20, $30, $50, you got yourself a perfectly working reel-to-reel machine in a lot of cases. So I would encourage you that if you want to get into this as well, keep your eyes peeled. There is 1.5 million different makes and models of tape decks out there, and they are plentiful. They are very plentiful, and I know that you can find one. All right, time for a direct feed sound test. Put on your headphones if you got them. We're going to do a stereo direct feed. So to demo this, we are going to be listening to this London Records Phase 4 Stereo Sampler album. Another thing I love about reel-to-reel is they often tell you what brand of tape that they use. You'll notice that this deck does not have any Dolby noise reduction or anything of that nature. It's got the basic EQ switch down there. But in order to control things like dynamic range, tape hiss, signal to noise ratio, you have to be aware of what blends and mixtures of tapes that you're using. One of my absolute favorites, by the way, is this right here. This is a Maxell UD series tape. And, I got this for $10 for, it was recorded on, but, it was sold as a blank. And this is a high quality, dark mixture. This particular one in a lot of, pre-recorded albums are recorded on cheaper mixtures, the lighter color, the tape, typically the cheaper the tape. But here is the box that it came in, by the way. This is just super, super cool. And hopefully this is friendly to the content ID matching or content matching bots out there on YouTube, because I just want to be able to listen to some of this. So we are going to do a high-res digital transfer, and I'm going to sync that up with the video that you're about to see, and we're going to give it a good listen. So obviously we are just scratching the surface on this recorder. There's a lot more to do. In the future, we might do a teardown video, although it looks surprisingly similar on the inside to the Magnavox and other ones. I mean, it's just once you've seen one, you've pretty much seen them all, I feel like, unless perhaps you get one with direct drive or some other functionality, but there's nothing that exciting. Perhaps in the future, we'll do a teardown. I have recorded on this and played back those recordings. They sound phenomenal as well. So there's another video for another day. Perhaps a sound comparison between this and a cheaper unit like the Magnavox or the reel-to-reel from Sears. We could possibly do that. But that is going to do it for now. I want to get your input down below. We'll also maybe do like a how to record on this because, you know, setting the levels, the tape source, selector switch, all that stuff. It's just fun. But hopefully now you've got a good idea of this unit, how it works. And, you know, I want to encourage you that if you want to go down this rabbit trail as well, that it's not too expensive. It's definitely doable. All right, guys. And that is going to do it for today. If you enjoyed this show, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't, give me a thumbs down. Consider joining us over on TikTok. Consider joining the Vinyl Nation, all that good stuff. We got more great content coming your way, but I promised you a little surprise, and here it is. The surprise is we are coming out with all new merch. We have actually been working with some designers that have been putting together some exciting things that I'm very excited to share with you in the near future. So if you want sort of our first gen merch that's available on the merch shelf down below, be like Vinylize and go like this, check that out because it's going to be discontinued pretty soon. So your chance to order that stuff is coming to a close, but new stuff is coming and that stuff is really, really cool. I'm very excited to share that with you. But my friends, that's going to do it for today. So happy record hunting, and we'll see you next time.